The Tower of Babel has always been a topic of much speculation and curiosity, and many people don't know what the Bible actually says about it, often ending up believing in accounts that have no biblical basis. But in this video, we'll learn a bit more about the Tower of Babel from the perspective of the Bible. Interestingly, the expression Tower of Babel doesn't appear in the Old Testament. Rather, it is the name popularly adopted to refer to the tower of the city of Babel. The word tower basically means watchtower, while the word Babel, from the Akkadian Babilu, means gateway of God, by combining the Akkadian Bab with the Hebrew El. However, the name Babel is also explained by popular etymology based on a similar Hebrew root that means confusion and mixture, which has phonetic connections with the word Babel. This is how the name Babel became synonymous with a place opposed to God, where there was the confusion of languages and the beginning of linguistic differences. But before we start talking about the Tower of Babel, we need to talk a little about the city of Babel. After the flood, God commanded mankind to spread out and populate the earth. But, contrary to God's command, that population decided to unify by building a city on the plain of Shinar. The city of Babel is the first city mentioned in the Bible after the flood, and the region where Babel was built later became the famous Babylon. The city of Babel was founded by Nimrod, who also founded the cities of Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. When Nimrod moved to Syria, he also built other cities, including the city of Nineveh. According to the biblical account in Genesis chapter 11, Babel was possibly the first seat of government from where his kingdom began. But along with the construction of Babel, the people also began to build a tower to strengthen the city, and this was an action completely against God's will, as the construction of the Tower of Babel basically represented the materialization of their refusal to obey God's command to spread out and populate the earth. The phrase applied to the Tower of Babel, with its top reaching the heavens, perfectly demonstrates the pride of that civilization, as well as the technological advancement humanity had already reached at that time. The text of Genesis chapter 11 does not clarify whether those people feared another flood, but the city's structure, the grandeur of its tower, and the persistence of a fully integrated society seem to suggest that condition. If this is really what happened, then this behavior, besides reflecting disobedience to God, also shows a lack of trust in the promise that the Lord had made, as God had promised that the earth would never again be destroyed by a flood. But how was the Tower of Babel built? At that time, in the Babel region, there were no stones that could be used as bricks, nor lime to be used as mortar. So, many constructions in that region were made with clay bricks dried in the sun or baked in ovens, and the foundation of the buildings was also made of trampled clay, while bitumen was used as mortar. The well-known Mesopotamian temple towers, called ziggurats, are used as references to understand the structure of the Tower of Babel. These towers were rectangular, built in levels, and accessible by stairways and ramps. They had a courtyard giving access to the second floor, and other stairways, usually external, led to the top of the tower. Generally, these towers had 3 levels, but there are indications of ziggurats with up to 7 levels. At the top of the tower, there was a sanctuary where the image of the deity honored by the ziggurat was placed. But these are only parameters, as we don't know how many levels the Tower of Babel had, nor is it possible to know if it served as a sanctuary, especially because its construction likely remained unfinished, along with the city itself, when the inhabitants were scattered. Likewise, the exact location of the Tower of Babel is also unknown. Only the region where the city was located is known. Because of this, there are several suggestions for the tower's location. Some interpreters agree with the tradition passed down by Jews and Arabs that the Tower of Babel was the Temple of Nabu, about 10 miles south of Babylon. This temple tower had 7 levels, and the strength of this suggestion is that the name of this tower may possibly be a variation of an expression that means Tower of Energy. The second suggestion holds that the Tower of Babel was located in the city of Babylon and was the well-known Etemenanke, whose name means the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. This structure was like a stepped pyramid and was about 100 meters high. This structure was known in antiquity as the Tower of Babylon, and the inhabitants of that empire believed that the god they worshipped descended to the temple at the top of the tower to communicate with them. Later, this tower was destroyed by Xerxes, and its rubble was likely removed by inhabitants of the region, leaving only a huge crater at the site. Other scholars argue that the Tower of Babel was west of Baghdad in Iraq. However, this theory is not widely considered, mainly because the city located in that region was modified only around 1400 BC. There is also a Jewish tradition that believes God sent fire from heaven and consumed the entire Tower of Babel, including its foundations, making it impossible to locate. Another tradition says that the Tower of Babel may have been knocked down by the force of the wind, leaving nothing behind. But while the exact location of the Tower of Babel is unknown, the main message about it is known. Both the city of Babel and its tower concretely represent humanity's ambition since the most ancient times. The Tower of Babel is a clear example of human insistence on disobeying God's commands. The most important biblical message about the Tower of Babel concerns God's judgment, which came upon those people, bringing the confusion of languages and initiating the geographical dispersion of humanity and the emergence of diverse cultures and languages. In Genesis chapter 11, verse 5, we can perceive an anthropomorphic element in God coming down to see the city and the tower that the people were building in Babel. And in Genesis chapter 11, verse 6, God makes it clear that this was only the beginning, and that human ambition would no longer respect boundaries in their plans and projects. God then brought judgment on that people and scattered them all over the earth. There's also a debate about whether the confusion of languages was a global or local event. Some scholars argue that this event occurred only within Semitic history. Thus, they understand that chapter 11 belongs to a section of the book of Genesis dedicated to the Semites. Therefore, the confusion of languages would have given rise to different dialects only among the Semitic people. But this interpretation is highly contested. The most accepted interpretation of Genesis chapter 11 is that the confusion of languages had a global impact. This means that humanity was concentrated there in Babel, and that, before this, everyone spoke the same language, which seems clear in light of verses 1 and 6 of Genesis chapter 11. It's possible that the author of Genesis used an organizational method in which the first part of chapter 11 precedes chapter 10 chronologically. This means that in chapter 10, he emphasizes Noah's descendants and geographical divisions, while in chapter 11 he demonstrates how these divisions occurred with the dispersion of the human race. Finally, many people try to speculate about the language spoken before the confusion of languages in Babel, but this is another question without an answer. In fact, we don't know what the initial language was before the confusion of languages at the Tower of Babel. Some scholars even suggest it might have been Hebrew, but there is no basis to support this idea, especially since the Hebrew language itself originated from other dialects. And that's everything we actually know about the Tower of Babel. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, subscribe now and activate all notifications so you won't miss any more videos here.